Good morning from Ireland, ahead of the North London derby, in which we've got some positive news to discuss regarding Arsenal's squad. Mikel Arteta takes to his press conference, but also some annoying news coming out from the other side. This is the Arsenal News Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk. Back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is the Arsenal News Show, joining you every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time. But today it is UK time, to be fair. 8 a.m. here in Northern Ireland, ahead of what is hopefully going to be an excellent day. Very much looking forward to it. A good friend of the show, listener and member and podcaster Owen Young, getting married today. If he's listening, which I hear that I am in for a bit of a grilling later from the missus, because all he hears and all she hears at 8 a.m. in the morning is my voice. So I'm very much looking forward to hearing that story later. But good morning to all of you in the chat box. Hope you're doing good. Hope you're doing well. Damien, Blackshine, Steve, John, Arasilki, Rowan, Carlton, Tom, Kevin, Sweating Merlot, Peekahoo, Temi, Amira, John, Maximius, Granddaddy Gunapul, and Mark. Before I get into some of your questions, I can see Fergus saying, how's the head? I could talk a little bit about last night. But first off, I have to suggest that you head over to yesterday's show, because yesterday's show, I don't know, the mood was low. The feeling weren't great. It was a Friday. Maybe you were just sleeping. But yesterday's 1K challenge went down the toilet, quite frankly. It was horrendous. We ended up on like 800 likes. So if we want this challenge to continue, if we want this run to go on, and right ahead of a North London derby as well, we're going to need your help, especially those that are listening perhaps on catch-up, those that are, of course, audio listeners as well. We've got 24 hours to save this run, and it's the biggest challenge I think we may have ever had when it comes to our 1K everyday like challenge. So once you've pressed a like on today's video, because we can't forget about that, make sure you head over to yesterday's show and drop a like over there too, because otherwise it brings an end to a run that's been going very, very well. I'm sure that we'll still carry on, but we need to make sure this run keeps going. So make sure you hop over to yesterday's show. Just for my own obsessions and compulsions, please do head over. And to do that ahead of the North London derby, to lose out on that run, mad. Anyway, yes, last night, I can tell you the story of yesterday, just briefly before I go into today's stories, for those that love our long intros. I know so many of you do and never complain about them. We arrive for a 5:40 flight about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, get onto the plane at about 20 past 5-ish, and then sit on the tarmac for another hour and a bit. I think we managed to leave something like 8 o'clock, just gone 8 o'clock in the end, arrived in Dublin at about 9:30. It was a trialing and testing few hours, of course, sitting on a very hot plane. That for a very brief moment, actually for a longer than a brief moment, felt like it wasn't ever going to take off. But thankfully it did, and we're here. And the less said about that, the better. And hopefully the return journey will be much, much smoother. Let's jump, shall we, though, into today's stories before people start to complain. We kick off with Arsenal announcing their 25-man Premier League squad, of course. And there are a number of players that are absent from this list because of being under the age of 21, such as Ethan Nwaneri, Miles Lewis-Skelly, for instance, as well. But the squad is as follows, with homegrown players also mentioned. So William Saliba, homegrown. Kieran Tierney, Ben White, homegrown. Thomas Partey, Gabriel, Bukayo Saka, homegrown. Martin Odegaard, Gabriel Jesus, Gabriel Martinelli, homegrown. Jurriën Timber, Jakub Kiwior, Alexander Zinchenko, Takehiro Tomiyasu, Leandro Trossard, Jorginho, David Raya, homegrown. Mikael Merino, Kai Havertz, Raheem Sterling, homegrown. Neto, Calafiori, and Declan Rice, homegrown as well. So yes, very much what we expected. What it also does is it brings to an end your thoughts and feelings and hopes and dreams that Arsenal might sign Adrien Rabiot, because the 14th of the month is indeed the deadline for Arsenal to have announced their 25-man squad, which of course means that no more free agents can be registered and still play between now and the next registration period, which of course is in 2025 in January, so after the January window. So do not expect to see any new players hopping into the squad, other than, of course, those that are not named on the list who are in our under-21s group as well. Some bad news to kick things off, I suppose, from the bad news of Tottenham's point of view. Both Dominic Solanke and Mickey van der Ven and Postecoglou have confirmed are expected to be fit for the North London derby, and they are both expected to play a part in the game, which I know will come as a frustration to supporters who had been hoping that both of them would miss the game. For some portion of me, I watched Solanke in his first game. I think, what was it, against Leicester? He looked very rusty, missed quite a few chances for them. So he's no Harry Kane, of course. So that is of a benefit. But I think that they will be pleased that he is available and as an option for them rather than playing Heung-min Son up top as well. So yes, there is expectations that both players will be available and probably will be starting for them on Sunday's lineup. However, we've got a lot to talk about from Mikel Arteta's press conference. And initially, I want to talk about Raheem Sterling and what he had to say about Raheem Sterling's involvement and also about kind of his signature as well. He said he looks great. First of all, because he's got a big smile on his face, a lot of energy. He's at it and he wants to prove a point. When someone has got that in their belly, you sense it straight away. Obviously, I don't need to discover anything about his quality and what he can bring to the team. He knows him very, very well, which makes a lot of sense, of course, because we know that those two have worked together. And actually, he was asked about what he's been like since his arrival. And he says, I see his hunger. He's a player who wants to play every minute of every game. And when that's not the case, he's not happy. He loves football. It's what he likes to do every single day. And I see that. His commitment, the level of energy that he's bringing to the team, and the quality is a big boost. You can feel that in the players as well. And when we walk through the doors, we are better with him. He's going to make us better. Asked about unlocking his goal-scoring ability, he says he has the ability, and the credit to that is his and the players he's got around him. You need that when you're one of the front players, and certainly he's had that intuition that will be and keep the ability to do that, and I'm sure he's going to impact the team. And of course, I think that Sterling has got a big, big role to play in this Arsenal team moving forwards. We hope, of course, that he can hit the ground running, and he's got all the momentum and motivation I think that he needs, of course, to take him into these next run of games to enter the fray, because he wants to prove Chelsea wrong. He wants to prove Enzo Maresca wrong, and he wants to get back into that England squad. So he has all the motivation in the world to play well for Arsenal right now, which is obviously what we want. Arteta was also asked on the latest injury situations, including the likes of Gabriel Jesus. He said Gabby was out there in terms of the training session, of course, on Friday. He's got another session on Saturday, and if everything goes well, he will be ready to be selected in his squad, which is great news for us. The question mark, of course, about Gabriel Jesus' situation is whether or not he's fit to start the game, with Declan Rice out and Mikel Merino out, and our midfield situation with Odegaard as well. We'll come on to him shortly, potentially also of a frustration. He spoke about Jesus in a way which made me think maybe he'll be ready for the bench, and that might cause us to move Trossard into that striker position in the short term. I guess we'll have to wait and see, though, on that one. But it is a boost to know that he is indeed back, as it is also the suggestions he spoke when talking about Ricardo Calafiori. He says it's another one that we have to wait another day or so. So it seems as though this injury that he suffered with the Italian national side was a short-term issue, short-term problem, and it was only a minor issue that hopefully means that he will indeed be in the squad. I doubt he'll be a starter. I hope that we can see him starting that game against Atalanta on Thursday to give some of the players a bit of a rest going into the match against Manchester City. But of course, the bigger news will come following the update on Mikel Merino, who obviously fans want to know about, and he says it's better. It's a slow process because it's a bone and it takes a while to heal, which does, I think, give you a little bit of an indication that, yes, indeed, he has fractured his shoulder. By mentioning, of course, it being a bone injury, that is a worry. He continues by saying he is progressing well and is already doing some stuff. He is working extremely hard, and we're using this time to make sure that he understands a lot of things that he has and a lot of questions about. And when he's back, he's ready to go and impact the team. He was asked about if he'll be back before the international break next month. And he says, we don't know, honestly. It's very difficult to understand the healing of the bone. And I think at the moment, he doesn't have a lot of symptoms, so you can speed it up very quickly because he hasn't lost anything else. But we have to wait and see. These are really difficult injuries to deal with. That said, the positives when you have, as a footballer, kind of an upper body injury is that it's not like a muscular calf or hamstring or ligament problem. It's very much not something that stops you from, doing some ball work, doing some running, keeping fit in those same ways. You can protect the shoulder while still doing some minor training stuff. So whereas like a muscular problem or an ACL or an ankle ligament injury, these are things that keep you off your feet. So you lose match fitness, you lose fitness in general. Having an upper body issue, of course, is something that we hope at least is going to allow him a speedier recovery and a more simpler reintegration into the squad. But the big story, of course, of the of the press conference, transfers on the brain, is Martin Odegaard. We all know it looked pretty severe when it came to the injury, of course, against Austria on Monday night. And now the club have had him back. They've had a chance to do their own scans. And Arteta was, of course, asked about his situation. He says, we need some more tests. So let's see what happens in the next day or so, this afternoon probably, and see what happens, what the extent of the injury is, and how quickly we can get him back. He's super positive about everything. We know Martin. He wants to be there every single day, but we have to wait and see. He was asked about whether or not it's as bad as it feared, and he said, I'll leave that to the doctor, but he's willing. There's no question about that. He wants to be present every game, and obviously in a big game like this one, but we need to make sure that we know, first of all, how good he can or not be. About ruling him out of the derby, he says players with 48 hours to go are always available, but let's see what happens. This is really weird, Laura. I found that very, very strange in terms of kind of an interview that we've come to expect from Arteta. I thought it was just a very, very strange way of talking, if you like, about an injury that clearly looks quite serious. I think it's to be honest, mind games. I would be utterly and entirely shocked if we saw Martin Odegaard in the squad on Sunday. I just can't see it happening. I just can't see how on earth he's ever going to be fit for that game. But we'll wait and see. And I look forward, of course, to seeing him back. But there is absolutely no there's absolutely no way of changing it. I've just realised I put all the pictures into the slides this morning. Have I changed the words? I haven't changed the words of this one, so I'll just put Odegaard update. That'll work. There you go. People stop moaning about my slides today. But yeah, Odegaard's update. There you go. But I can't see him being back. I just can't see anything other than kind of him being vague in these questions and in these answers. So I wouldn't expect anything other than something like this. But yeah, fingers crossed that Odegaard's injury is not serious, and we hear more about him, of course, ahead of the game against Atalanta. The press conference of that will be on Wednesday, but I'd be entirely shocked to see Odegaard in the squad on Sunday afternoon. What's not shocking, though, is, of course, the brilliance and safety and security that NordVPN can bring you on your tablet, on your laptop, or, of course, on your mobile device as well. NordVPN is a service that I'll be using this very weekend while, of course, I'm away across the smaller pond over in Ireland and Northern Ireland this weekend, of course. And by using a VPN, you can hop digitally to anywhere else of the territories that are supported by Nord, of course, back in my origin country, the UK. So if there's anything that I need to watch that is location locked, I will be able to use that seamlessly without any barriers whatsoever. It brings you security, of course, as I've mentioned, things that you definitely need in 2024. So if you're going on any websites, if you're going on anywhere and you're concerned that where you're surfing the net is a risk to your data, VPNs, of course, bring that protection. Perhaps you're going onto a public Wi-Fi somewhere. A VPN is an absolute must so that when you're on those public Wi-Fis that they aren't doing anything they shouldn't be and getting anything of yours you wouldn't want them to have. And if you go to nordvpn.com/Gooner, you can get yourself a significant discount off a 1 or a 2 year plan. There's 4 months extra thrown in free on top of that too. And if you're not happy with the service for whatever reason, you can get a 30-day money back guarantee. Who can say any fairer than that? And of course, Football Prizes continues to support the channel, and I'll let you know as soon as there is a brand new Arsenal related opportunity for you to win some fantastic memorabilia. But I recommend anyway you head over to the website to go and check out everything that's on offer. Loads of different footballing memorabilia to win, loads of different types of prizes, not just specifically to clubs, but lots on offer. So go and have a look, go and check it out. It is UK only, of course, so please do give it a read. Right, let's go to part 2 and your questions right after this. All right, then, it's part of the show, and I see our man to be marrying Owen is, of course, hold on, that didn't sound right. Is in the chat box this morning. Good to see you, Owen. I hope you're doing good, mate, and I'll see you soon. Also, Younger dropping in a super chat for us. Hey, Tom, how many points do you have to be from the first place to have been in a title race, in your opinion? I don't know. I think it just has to go to kind of like the final days of the season. Surely that would be a title race, I imagine. Just kind of like that you're still in with a chance of winning it come the final few games of the season. I think that Arsenal are in a title race for the last 2 seasons, and we will be aiming to be as well this season, of course. We're going to be going live for another like 13 or so minutes. So if you've got a question, now's the time to get it. And of course, as I mentioned at the start of the show, yesterday's show, goodness me, the like button was not receiving the love that it usually deserves. So make sure you haven't done so already, drop a like on today's video. Help us to 1K every day. And if you could be ever so kind to jump over to yesterday's show to help us to reach that 1K target, just to tip us over the edge on what was clearly a down day for us, please make sure you go over and do that. Vesman says, not a question, but I wanted you to know that I listen from the US and I don't get to watch a live show often. You're part of the morning routine, and I can't say enough of how much I appreciate everything you do. Thank you. Thank you, Vesman. That's very kind of you indeed. I wonder if the LP in your name stands for Lincoln Park, because I did manage to get my hands on 2 Lincoln Park tickets yesterday, which I was panicking for a bit. I was in that position in the queue where like the bar is not moving, but the missus managed to get in and get 2. However blooming expensive they were. Rob says, when you look... Hold on. Sorry about the connection, by the way. I see there's a couple of Wi-Fi issues, which are, of course, completely out of my control. So apologies if there are any connectivity problems and lags for you in the next 10 minutes or so. I'm doing the best I can. Rob says, when you look at the Premier League squads, it really puts into perspective the negativity of our signings. Probably only Tierney could be questioned, rather, and he's in the shop window at the moment. So when's there going to be room for all of these signings that we didn't make? And of course, I think this is a good point. It does put into perspective to some degree, of course, the level of it puts into perspective kind of the level of competition, the depth that we do have. There's always a craving for signings. There's always a craving for more business. It's just the way that we are. It's just the way that the world works. But ultimately, that's the position that we have found ourselves to be in. Let's go to TJR says, you tried so hard and got so far, but in the end, did it really matter? Of course it did. And hopefully at the end of this season, it will matter. Justin says, heck yeah, Tom managed to convince the missus for a Lincoln Park concert. I love that. Alistair says, with or without Martin and Declan, I still think that we're better than Spurs. I would tend to agree. Joshua says, just randomly woke up at 3 a.m. in the States. Keep up the good work, Tom. Cheers, mate. And back to bed for me. Thank you, Joshua. Drop a like before you go. Please do drop a like before you leave us. Tim says, Merino getting time to settle and study the way that we play, train and live, etc. might be a silver lining for him. Remember Rice, among others, mentioning how they had to learn to play football again under Mikel Arteta. I think it's a really good point. John says, would you start Ethan Nwaneri tomorrow, Tom? And if we don't, how does that affect his confidence and potential? I don't think not starting him in this game is going to have any impact at all on his confidence. I think there's a good chance that we might see Nwaneri play tomorrow. Like, he may come off the bench because of how light we are, because of the injuries that we've got and the midfield issues that we've got. But I'd be very surprised if he starts. For me, if you haven't already watched our preview show, we recorded that, of course, yesterday. Make sure you go and watch our preview show. But yes, I think that from my perspective, I'd be playing Havertz in a second striker role with Jesus up top if he's fit enough to start. That's obviously a big question. Then you've got Trossard or Martinelli or Sterling to play on the left. I think I'd go with Trossard for the moment. And then, of course, Saka on the right. And then you've got Jorginho and Partey in midfield. Antoine says, do you feel that if Arteta doesn't win the Premier League but can win another domestic cup, that he has brought the club forwards? We need to continue progressing. We need to continue fighting. It's very difficult to progress in terms of the league position, of course, other than going up one more and winning it. If you're not winning it, showing that progress in the league is just, again, being consistent, challenging, pushing City all the way and as far as we feasibly can. But hopefully we can win it. A trophy would definitely help to give fans something tangible to kind of hold on to. But frankly, the disrespect that the FA Cup that Arteta won in 2020 gets today, who's to say that even winning a League Cup or an FA Cup would change the way he is viewed by some? So if he wins the league, that for me will obviously make quite a lot of people look rather silly. But ultimately, we're in a position now where we need to be delivering. And he's got this new contract. And as I've said before, in these next 3 years, next 3 seasons, for me, he has to deliver a Premier League title or indeed a Champions League trophy to justify getting that next deal. Onyx Len says, is there any way that Arteta could get caught up in any of the sanctions at Manchester City? If they're found guilty, how far back did the charges go? I think they're all about 2008 to 2000 and Man City charges years. I think it's 2008, 2018. So Mikel Arteta, I very much doubt it because obviously this is to do with financial fair play and financial breaches, which Arteta wouldn't have been involved in. So he joined Arsenal in 2019 and was with Man City from, I think, 2017 to that period. So he would have been there during the period that they're under investigation for, but it's not to do, but I don't think Guardiola would face any punishments, let alone Arteta. I think it's all to do with the running of the club itself. So, no, I don't think so. It's a fair question to ask. Brian says, keep, bench, sell, Arteta, Saliba, Saka. Great question. I don't want to answer it, though, Brian. It's incredibly difficult. I got asked one of these questions the other day about Saliba, Saka. And plus, you don't sell managers. You'd have to put it into a different question. Saliba and Saka and Arteta, they're all incredibly, incredibly difficult to replace. I think that when you're looking at kind of importance of members of like how the club is set up, the club in itself is always the number one. The manager is always going to be the next most important person in the squad before you can get to your players, of course, as well. But we always look at managers being more replaceable, of course, because they're not like players that are being bought and sold. So it's very difficult. But Arteta is without a doubt, as an individual, the most important man at Arsenal Football Club at the moment. So it's very difficult to say that you'd move on the manager who's taken you to this point, and you're not getting money for him in the same way that if you were to sell Saka and Saliba, you'd get huge sums of money you'd expect, of course, for those players that you could reinvest in the squad. You can't do that in the same way with a manager. So it's almost an impossible question, Brian, to answer. John says, if it wasn't for the abomination that is City, we would have won the Premier League for the last 2 seasons. 115 charges, alleged breaches, of course, starts on Monday. Ryan says, hey, Tom, would you start Trossard or Martinelli on Sunday? Great show, mate. Keep up the good work. Thanks, Ryan. I think I lean towards Trossard. The reason why is because I'd start Jesus and Havertz. Those 3, Trossard, Jesus, Havertz, looked excellent against Bayer Leverkusen. So I think I'd carry on that thread, that continuation of what they can do. Finley says, Saliba must keep for me. We went years with horrible centre-backs and it's the last time we let one of these go. Akin Yemi says, Tom, I just bought this kit, yet to arrive though, but it looks so good. Thanks, man. Yeah, it's a nice kit, isn't it? And I recommend it. It's the goalkeeper kit, the third choice goalkeeper kit, I think. Fergus says Trossard has more impact from the bench. I mean, he does, of course. He comes off the bench, but I remember he's come off the bench in a few games, like I think the Spurs game last season, and didn't really offer too much. So it's not necessarily a guarantee that he does at all for me. I guarantee you impact. And I think that the combination of him, Havertz and Jesus was really good against Leverkusen. And if you're not using the usual centre-forward setup and you haven't got Odegaard, maybe that is more of a way forwards for us. Because I think Trossard's the most creative, arguably, of him and Martinelli. Sterling also has a question mark about whether or not he can come into this team and at what point he can as well. Chris Moss says, Tom, how do the Arteta outers make it okay in their heads that City and Real Madrid that they love would take Arteta if we didn't re-sign him? Yet they want him out. It's ridiculous contradictions. I understand where you're coming from. If Arteta was to leave Arsenal, he would be being snapped up by the biggest clubs, the most elite teams on earth right now. That's how highly he is rated. That's how highly he is appreciated by these teams. If Arteta had left this summer, had a year out and Guardiola left, he'd be in charge of Man City next season. I have absolutely no doubt about that. If Ancelotti left Real Madrid, him and Xabi Alonso would be up there amongst the candidates for that job. I have no doubt. And of course, if Barcelona moved on their coach, of course, they would also look potentially at Arteta as well. It's just an obvious reality that if Arteta leaves Arsenal, at this point, he goes to, and the next job he takes is one of the best, most elite level jobs in the world. Simple as that. Anyway, that's going to bring an end to today's show. Thank you so much for listening. As I said before, we really do need your help today with the likes, and we need them on yesterday's show as well. So please do hop over to yesterday's. Help us on our way to 1K every day. Help us today on our way there too. If you're new to the channel, please drop a like. Tomorrow morning, I hope to be with you for an 8 a.m. show, but I am at an Irish wedding today. So I'm just going to put that and leave that out in the ether. There is a chance there may not be a show tomorrow, but there is a game to watch. And I look forward to watching it tomorrow. And of course, bringing you a roundup of the game on Monday morning from Dublin. It'll be on Monday, but there may or may not be a show. I hope that there is. I really do. I'm going to try and pace myself, but we'll see how it goes. Have a fantastic Saturday, people. Enjoy the football if you're watching it. And of course, hopefully to see you tomorrow. If not, though, I'll see you on Monday to break up and break down that North London derby that is, of course, so big tomorrow. But I hope to be with you tomorrow. Stay well, stay happy, and as always, and stay safe and respectful, not in that order. But as always, up the Arsenal.